Was this always like... Have Sonic games been like this before?
Oh, dude, yeah. Every 3D Sonic game is bad. Okay. Whoa! Controversial statement!
I'm starting to suspect after making a video where he says shit like that public, Aaron must spend the rest of the day jerking off to the comments section. Before talking about the big bad of this big bad, I want to go over a couple of things. Let's talk about the music. You may have noticed I've been using music from other games like Sonic After the Sequel so far. That's because this game's soundtrack bores me to sleep. Lyric's Tomb is a pretty drab place. That's kind of the point, I know, but what really kills it for me is the background music. It's so bland, it's just not funny. In fact, the game's entire soundtrack is pretty darn forgettable. I didn't really enjoy any of it. Even in the most dismal Sonic games, one thing you can almost always count on was a killer soundtrack. After being spoiled for so long, it's pretty disillusioning to see a Sonic game, a console Sonic game at that, where the soundtrack falls so short. Sure, it picks up in the later stages a little bit, but there's no soul to it. This is one thing I easily prefer about Shadow Crystal. The music in that game is still kinda meh, but at least there are melodies that I can easily recall and hum to myself if I want to, and not just as dun 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 action set piece or boom, boom, boom boom atmospheric tripe. I know what some of you are gonna say. The Shadow Crystal is faster paced and over quicker, so of course its soundtrack has more energy to it. Rise of Lyric takes its time, so instead of looping the same song 10 times in a single stage, they just made it a blob of random beats that you'll never get tired of since you can barely hear them anyway. Yeah, great job. Emerald Hill, Angel Island, Emerald Coast, City Escape, Okay, there's one tune I can call just from memory, but that's only because I've heard it 100 times in the trailers already. You know the one. One last thing that bugs me about the tutorials, yeah, we're still not done here, is the pacing. You're constantly bombarded by cutscenes. Usually this isn't a problem for me, and I don't mind a few of them, like in, say, Geyser Rock, but there are so many of them here. There's like 20, I swear. And I get it, they're introducing a lot of crazy mechanics in a relatively short span of time, and a big chunk of these early cutscenes are used to do just that. But in that case, just have the characters tell you what to do in-game. Oh wait, they do! Constantly! You thought this was a problem in Sonic Heroes? We'll come back to this later, because it gets even worse as the game goes on. Anyway, it's time we finally talked about Lyric. He's the title character after all, so he must be pretty great. He's a cyborg snake who's used his cybernetics to preserve himself for 1,000 years. He's also familiar with Sonic apparently. There are moments when I like him, and moments that just kinda fall flat. As you can probably see coming from a mile away, he usurps Eggman and takes complete control of the plot. One thing I really like about his character is that he apparently left his robot minions laying around for someone like Eggman to eventually find, and hopefully free him. How ironic then that Sonic ends up freeing the guy. Anyway, Eggman thought he'd taken control of Lyric's robots, but only takes one push of a button to make them switch sides back to Lyric. Should've made a big red button if you ask me. He does this several times throughout the game with other machines, including Metal Sonic. It's kinda hard to explain how he's able to hack into robots with just one button, which is like using one key on a keyboard, but I guess it's more of a mental thing than technical. Maybe his own robotic enhancements are so deeply ingrained into his body that he's able to compel robots with his brain, and pushing that button broadcasts a signal that translates his thoughts into some kind of code that robots are able to process. I know I'm probably putting more thought into this than the writers did, but anyway, I can appreciate him being used to convey the central conflict of the entire Sonic series to newcomers, nature versus technology, or in this case, nature learning to coexist with technology. I feel the series too easily loses sight of this most of the time, and it's nice to see it brought back to light, even if the way they go about it is laying it on pretty thick. Heck, the characters outright state this to the player at the beginning of a segment where Lyric and Eggman chase you together. It shouldn't surprise anyone that I think he has a great design. What makes his character fall flat, though, is how stupid and pointless his plan is. He wants to wipe out all organic life forms and technoform the world until it looks like Cybertron or something, home only to his robot minions. Naturally, he plans to discard his own lowly fleshy shell and dump his mind into a computer or something to complete his plan, right? Or did he just forget that organic life includes him too? Whatever. Alright, so basically studying the power crystals, this game's Chaos Emeralds, gave Lyric cancer. I'm not kidding. He can't survive without a suit anymore, and he wants revenge on his fellow ancients for letting him down somehow. So he's taking out on everyone and everything else, of course. It's a start, but as far as character motivations go, it's hard to see how the means logically lead to the end in this case.
Technology is the only thing you can trust.
Technology is so wonderful, I'm gonna use it to murder everyone instead of using it to make their lives better. That'll show him. Now to go make love to my harem of gynoids. That's a pretty weak excuse to take his suffering out on everyone, if you ask me. I would think someone in Lyric's position would appreciate how precious life is, and want to share the gift of technology with all to cure their ills, make cyborg arms and legs for amputees, give the mute a voice, let the blind see, make artificial organs for people whose own organs are failing them, things like that. The whole idea of power crystals having this kind of effect on someone with prolonged exposure to them is such a cool idea, and there's so much the writers could have done with this, but nope, we need a new bad guy, so let's just have Lyric kill everybody because it's fun. What a waste of life and potential for a great character. He's alright, and he pulls some smart moves here and there, but he's kind of a letdown, and by the end of the game he's devolved to yelling at you to die over and over and growls at you when he runs out of ways to say that. Not that this matters, but if this were my story, I would have had Lyric be the victim here, like Eggman creates a sort of Lyric robot to keep the heroes busy while he makes up with the real Lyric's technology, who only ever wanted to help people, and you meet him later and... Yeah, I'm done, let's move on. So Lyric escapes his tomb after roping Sonic and friends together with a sort of beam snare device. Tails not only deactivates the thing, but manages to retool its parts for everyone to use as a sort of lasso to swing around and grab enemies, and tug at various things in the game world, fallen bridges and old generators and things like that. And with that, we're introduced to a new gameplay mechanic. I'll admit, when I first saw footage of them using this thing, I had to wonder if this was supposed to be the new selling point of the Sonic series now. But nope, it's just a simple mechanic that's given a good explanation for why the characters are using it in this particular game, and they lose its ability by the end of the game. All things considered, I like how they've handled the inner beams. Let's talk about the combat. Like some other things in this game, it's pretty bare bones. You fight the same few enemies over and over again, using the same few tricks over and over again. It gets stale pretty fast, and slows the gameplay down much more than necessary, though it may have been intentional. I'll get into that. It kinda bugs me that they have to shake the camera around every single time you make contact with an enemy. I can understand them doing that when an enemy explodes or something, like in Mega Man ZX, but every hit? I know this seems nitpicky, but they're clearly trying to mask how underwhelming the combat is by stimulating the player to make it seem more exciting than it could ever truly be. The inner beam mixes things up a bit, but it only goes so far. You know, aside from the combat, the pacing really isn't that bad. I'd be happy to just leisurely jog around and jump on platforms if the enemies didn't constantly get in the way. Even just cutting down their health by half would make the combat so much less time-consuming. In fact, I can't help thinking the combat was designed this way just to extend playtime, like the Hedgehog. And even then, at least the Hedgehog has a shit ton of cool combos you can unlock to spice things up. In this game, the combat's just tedious because it's so repetitive, and yeah, I think you could pick up a few new moves as you go on, but it doesn't fix the problem that this entire combat system is. Sure, in Jak and Daxter the combat's incredibly simple, but most enemies only take 1 or 2 hits, so it works. The fighting never stops your flow when you're jumping around doing stuff because it's over so quickly. Sure, there's that one arena in Misty Island, but there's like 50 areas like that in this game. You know what, so far I've spent this entire time pissing on this game, and I don't want to do that. Time to talk about something I like. Once you escape Lyric's tomb, you enter the main hub of this game. It's pretty big, and most of the levels are connected to this one place. You can even replay some areas as you go on. What I really like about this place is that, as big and open as it is, it doesn't feel empty. It's packed full of landmarks and distinct geography, and little things to do. I don't ever get lost in this place because I can easily remember where everything is once I've seen it. I see something, and I want to go look at it, and see what else I can find there. That's exploration, not just fumbling about not knowing what to do or where to go. And while I don't really care for any other people you meet along the way, I appreciate that we finally get a Sonic game that appears to be populated mainly by anthros, and not just ordinary realistic humans in some who-framed Roger Rabbit sort of deal. I do find it kind of funny that no one wants to talk to you at first. Everyone's like, "Ah, shit, Sonic and his dorky friends are back." You find a guy named Cliff who tells you about Lyric's origins, the power crystals and all that, which Lyric's out to use as a power source to activate his long-lost army of giant robots. To find the power crystals, you'll need a map that Lyric made. After finding your way around some slightly less drab ruins in the previous stage, a few more quick-stepping sections and the like, you meet an ancient supercomputer, Maya, who says the map you need hasn't existed for 1,000 years. If you want to access the map, she'll have to send you back. Well, that was easy.
Not so fast, Sonic.
Ah, shit.
Shadow, what are you doing here?
Not a great time, Shadow. I'm a little busy saving the world.
Saving the world? You? Don't make me laugh. You're weak. And you know what makes you weak? Your loyalty to your pathetic friends.
This cutscene pisses me off every time I see it. Yeah, Shadow, that might have sounded kinda cool if it hadn't already been said by like 200,000 other villains before you. Like, what does it even mean anyway? It just sounds sillier every time someone says it. I'm gonna beat you up for having friends! That'll show you! I have no friends! Come to think of it, why is Shadow being such a jerk in this game? There's no reason for it. It's like they wanted him to be in the game as fan service, but they couldn't think of anything interesting to do with him, so they just made him over the top and more cliche and evil than ever. At least in the 3DS version, he's being controlled by Lyric and gets revenge for this, but in this game, he's just here to mess with you and that's it. But wait, it gets better. After this encounter, he only ever appears once more during the game's ending, and then he just faffs off and we never learn anything about him. Gee, wasn't that great? The writers didn't bother whipping up some unique new origin story for him, so if this isn't the Shadow we know from the other games, who is he? Does he really have nothing better to do with his day than follow Sonic around? If you ask me, that makes Shadow seem pretty pathetic. This completely unprovoked attack doesn't make a lick of sense. It just comes out of the blue to make fake drama and doesn't contribute anything of any value to any of the characters. If anything, these writers have ruined Shadow by making him the pettiest bastard to ever appear in a Sonic game. I mean, is this really how they think we see him? Let me tell you something. We don't like Shadow for being some thug. We like him because he's cool. His motivations, his convictions, all that stuff makes for a really intense character when used right. But what motivation could he possibly have to pull this crap? His dialogue seems to imply that he'd rather take Lyric down himself, that he doesn't think Sonic is even worth being allowed to make the attempt. But it's obvious he's just putting that up as a front to have an excuse to antagonize Sonic and make sweet hate with him all night. This doesn't make Shadow badass, this doesn't make him cool, unless you're 6. I know I'm getting a little worked up over this one character, but you know what, I like Shadow, and I can't stand how badly they've butchered him in this game. Then again, he's not the only one they've ruined, but this portrayal of him offends me the most. It's dumb. Dumb, 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 dumb. And so are the writers for thinking this junk was somehow a good idea, and that it would make us like their Shadow more. They've completely sucked out any dignity the character could still possibly have, and I hate them for it. Ugh, what a tool. The boss fight with him is kinda cool. He uses Chaos Spear, Chaos Control, Chaos Blast, the works. There's potential here for a truly outstanding character battle. If the fighting mechanics had a little more depth to them, I think this could be one of the most thrilling moments in any recent Sonic game. As it is though, the cutscene before it and the sluggish combat just ruined it for me. After leaving Shadow stranded some other time period, Sonic and Tails make it to the pass they're looking for, and are well on their way to getting Lyric's map. Let's hope they don't somehow destroy the fabric of space and time while they're at it.